Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mindful Running podcast. So, how do people improve their ability to handle stress? How do we make use of the breath in our favor? How can we use breath in literally every situation to enhance performance, healing, awakening, de stressing, dealing with anxiety, etc.? Breath can have a profound effect on us. It is one of the things we have conscious control over. It can help us relax and find energy at the same time. It's the intersection of the physical and the spiritual. We are all looking to make bigger contributions and have an edge in everything that we do. So, why not make use of the breath, as Dan says, which is right under our nose? Today, I have the privilege to host Dan Brule, also known as the Bruce Lee of breathwork, who is a modern day teacher, healer, life coach, and spiritual teacher. He's a world renowned expert and authority in the art and science of breathwork, and also the founder of the International Center for Breathwork and the Breathing Festival. Dan is a former US Navy deep sea diver, medical rescue specialist, and Vietnam era veteran. He is one of the creators of breath therapy and was among the original group of internationally certified rebirthers. He is a master of prana yoga and qigong, which is Chinese medical breathing exercises, and he leads the worldwide spiritual breathing movement. He coaches, trains, and certifies professional breath workers. And since 1970, he has traveled to 67 countries and has personally taught more than 250,000 people to use breath and breathing for personal growth, professional development, peak performance, self healing, and spiritual awakening. He has trained Olympic athletes, special forces, and elite martial artists. He also coaches leading medical experts, psychotherapists, yoga teachers, fitness gurus, corporate executives, life coaches, and celebrities, including Tony Robbins. Dan is the author of several books, including Just Breathe, which is a wonderful book. If you guys can get a hang of this, and it is now available in 10 languages. So, with that, I invite Dan to the Mindful Running platform. Good morning, Dan.
Hey, good morning.
How are you doing?
Oh, good. If I was doing any better, I'd have to be twins.
Yeah, so we are very happy and excited to have you here, Dan. And it's a privilege to actually have you here. And I know this country also means a lot to you. So people are really excited to hear our conversation now. Yeah. So I
Okay.
know we just have an hour, Dan, and the topic is so vast, and it's just so much to talk about. But I'll try and keep it as concise as possible. But I would love to hear you, so feel free to just talk. And I know that whatever you talk, I wish I could just make it like put you on the screen and you just talk. But I have some questions, and I will obviously get some questions from the audience, which I will put forward. So,
Okay.
yeah, so we'll just get started right away, Dan. So,
Yes,
yeah, so
let's get going.
tell us about yourself. What is breath work? How did it all start for you?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There's just been something about the breath ever since I was a small child. Starting in kindergarten, I was a little in Catholic school. I was raised as a Catholic, and very early in kindergarten, I can remember hearing the story of the first book in the Bible, Genesis, about how God took the dust of the earth and formed the body of man and then breathed into the nostrils uh, the breath of life. And man became a living soul. I mean, I thought that was the most exciting thing as a little child. I was like, wow, God is breathing into us? I couldn't understand why everybody wasn't excited. So some kind of a spark was lit really early in my life. There was something magical, mystical about the breath, something really beautiful. And And then I don't know, I kept getting the wind knocked out of me as a kid, in the schoolyard. I had a couple of near drowning experiences. It seemed like, the life just kept sticking my nose back in the breath. And my first job was as an X-ray technician. And an easy X-ray to take is a chest X-ray. And so as a student, I was getting all of the chest X-rays. And when you take a chest X-ray, you tell the person, taking a deep breath, okay, hold it, and then click, you take their picture. And so I gave those simple instructions to a couple of thousand people over a year or two as an X-ray technician, and everybody did something different. The muscles they used, the expression on their face, what they felt was a full breath, what they went through to accomplish it. And it seemed like the breath just started speaking to me. I could start to see how the person's breathing expressed and reflected their relationship to their body, to life, to the world, to others. And then I resuscitated somebody. I learned cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I was so surprised I was the only one from the X-ray department who went to that course on a Saturday. Maybe people just didn't want to go in, on a weekend. But I was the only one in the X-ray department who took this course. I thought, wow, I thought everybody would want to learn how to do this, And within 2 weeks of taking that training, I was up in the intensive care unit with my portable X-ray machine. And while I was there, a patient basically arrested. And immediately my training kicked in and I blew into him and he blinked and woke up. And so what a miracle. You come upon somebody who's clinically dead and you share your breath with them and they come alive. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that every day? I was like, wow. I mean, I was just ecstatic. It was just like a miracle, and when you love what you do, the universe keeps giving you opportunities to do it. So I would be on an airplane, someone would have a heart attack. I'm at the beach and someone is drowning. I'm in a restaurant,
Oh, wow.
someone chokes on food. And I thought, maybe I'm bad luck. I just love resuscitating people and they seem to be like falling in my path wherever I went. And so I was quite happy when I got out of the military and I learned rebirthing and a method developed by Leonard Orr. And then my practice went to a whole new level because instead of coming upon people who are dead and breathing with them and having them become alive, I could work with people who are alive and breathe with them and make them more alive. And so it's the same work, just a couple of steps up the ladder, a little more fun, and maybe even much more important. So I've just been a student of the breath, and we don't have a Western tradition in the US around breath work. So I have to go to India, to China. If I read or heard of anybody who was teaching breathing, I was either kissing their feet or breathing down their neck until I could get from them whatever they had. And I would go on to the next teacher, like a bee, just seeking out pollen, different flowers. And so it's never stopped. I'm a student of the breath. I'm a missionary for the breath. And I'm still wondering what the limits are. Maybe there doesn't seem to be any limits to what's possible when we unlock the power and the potential of conscious breathing. Just it's like a miracle. For me, it's a miracle. And how something right under our nose and so simple and so basic. And when you start to explore it and you play with it, it unlocks so much inside of us. So I have no off button when it comes to breathing. And so you could check with me in another 50 years and you'll find I'm still doing the same thing.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating because in your book, you've spoken about there are so many breathing techniques all around the world. And your passion for breathwork and how it started, which actually made you, like you said, go like a bee from flower to flower. And you've kind of touched upon anyone who was talking about breathing in any part of the world. So you would go to any extent to get that information. and get that. Yeah, yeah. So what is breath work? I mean, people know breathing, simple, inhale, exhale. So what is it?
Well, it's the art and the science of using breath awareness and conscious breathing as a tool, as a force, as a bridge for health, for growth, for change in spirit, mind, and body. It's it's a, it's a it's kind of self-liberation. Breath work helps us to hack into our nervous system, hack into our immune system, get a handle on so-called involuntary processes. And so breath work is about human potential. It's about accessing and developing the ability we have that we're all born with to use the breath consciously in a way that can uplift us, that, as you mentioned earlier, that can energize us, that can relax us, and help us to perform, help us to stay clear, stay centered. When everybody else is going crazy, the breath is a beautiful anchor that keeps us clear and calm. And so, yeah, it's about it's not therapy, but it's therapeutic. It's not
Yeah.
religious, but it's definitely spiritual. Um, and it's not serious, but it's sacred. So, breathing is one of those simple, basic things that we overlook and we underestimate. But as soon as we begin to really explore it and dig into it, we start unlocking all of the promises of the ancient spiritual practices. And that's the synopsis of my book. And thank you for showing it. Is that all of the high states and the extraordinary abilities that we once just, we assigned to just the great masters, the saints, the yogis, the mystics, the great warriors, all of those same high states and those amazing abilities are accessible to the average person. And I think just through breathing. So.
Yeah. And I think that is something that people have in their minds that, if you need to reach a certain level, be it in any field, one has to really, have been arrived in that. And like you said, that, I mean, there are so many times that we overlook the breath. And after I finished reading your book, I was so conscious of it that there are so many times that I realized that I had stopped my breath for no reason.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Yeah,
climbing
no.
the stairs or doing something, my breath had just stopped. And then I was like, oh, why am I doing that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that breath awareness is really important. And that's one of the first things that we teach is to develop this tendency to observe your breath at different times in different situations. When you're stuck in traffic, how are you breathing? When someone insults you, how are you breathing? When someone praises you, how are you breathing? When you're washing dishes, how are you breathing? When you're angry, how are you breathing? When you're listening to music, how are you breathing? Most people don't turn to their breath in those moments. Their consciousness is dominated by whatever is happening. And this ability to kind of step back and observe our breathing creates a space of choice. Instead of reacting, we have a moment where we can consciously respond. The breath is like a wedge. You stick it in the door and it keeps a certain connection open and an access to, say, peace or joy or love or freedom, to be able to have a way to experience those beautiful states. And you don't want to have to depend on someone else or a special place or a special time or, some complicated technique. It has to be very easy. And it is. As soon as we turn to our breath, we are not doing what we usually would do in that moment. And so it creates a possibility. And I'm really excited about what is possible when we master this very simple thing that we call breathing, that most people think, what's to think about? What's to do? Breathing, what is it? Well, so, I see you haven't practiced. Aha. Well, let's play with a couple of things and you'll start to see why some people can be so passionate about the breath. So, that, there's something about unarguable experience. When a person has an internal experience, they don't need scientific proof. They don't need convincing. They have an unarguable experience, and they're motivated to learn more. What else can I feel? What else can I do? What else can I access? And so I love turning people on to the power of the breath.
Yeah. And it's the first thing is as simple as it is, and it is so powerful. People mostly think that simple things are not important, or but this is as simple as breathing that we do every day, and it has like so many benefits in every
Yeah.
field. And that takes me actually to my next question, Dan, where you spoke about and you also talk about that just being aware, or breath awareness. It's not about whether you're in any field. So let's talk about people who work in any field, okay, whether you're a doctor, lawyer, you know there is a certain potential that you can reach with breath work. So can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about, peak performance, or how could people kind of take their performance to the next level and make use of the
Mm.
breath in their favor in order to do that?
All right. Well, everything starts with awareness. Everything starts in consciousness. And so the first step is breath awareness, observing the breath, not doing anything to it, just noticing it, watching it, feeling it, sensing it, tracking the breathing moment to moment. Um, because the more conscious I become of my breathing, the more conscious I become of everything. The more aware I am of my breath, the more aware I am of my posture, my feelings, my emotions, my reactions, my behavior. And so, no matter what field you're in, awareness, consciousness is primary. It's and so we use the breath to become more mindful, as concentration training, as attention training. And we use the breath to manage our arousal, to manage our emotions, to manage our chemistry. Um, and so, with that kind of skill, whether you're in the battlefield or the boardroom or the classroom or the bedroom, this awareness of breath can enhance and sort of deepen or expand any other experience. And, it's about becoming more conscious. It's about learning how to relax into intensity. And, if you're a performer, a peak performer, you got to get comfortable with intensity. And so it's about the ability to relax into intensity. And it's also about the ability to generate energy, to perform, to accomplish our mission in life, to have the force and the power to make changes, to make a difference. And it's about creative energy, because in the breath is the breath. So in the Greek and Hebrew, they have this term ruach. It's like the breath within the breath. And in the Eastern tradition, they have a similar idea that the prana, the energy, the chi, the ki, there's a subtle energy. It's not just about air, it's about energy. And anybody can breathe air, but can you develop the ability to breathe energy? And this is what unlocks, to direct the flow of chi, to direct the flow of prana, to circulate energy in a way that heals the body, that soothes the body, that detoxes us. And so all those things are important no matter what field you're in. And I mentioned being an X-ray technician, and that's when I got sort of alerted to this principle. I had a beautiful experience. There was a very famous surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, who was traveling around the country. This was 1970 when I was an X-ray technician, 1969. And they had just developed this hip nailing, where they put a titanium or stainless steel pin in someone's hip when they break their hip. And it was like a new procedure. And I guess he worked for the company that made these pins for hip nailings. And he was traveling around the country training other surgeons. And the first thing that really got my attention is when I was in the cafeteria in the hospital, and the surgeons were so giddy and they were so excited that this special doctor was coming. Maybe they were seeing dollar signs in their eyes. I don't know, but I just thought, wow, these guys are usually so serious, and they're like at the in the medical world in a hospital, surgeons are like the gods, and to see these guys like giddy, like school children, like Christmas was coming, it kind of excited me. And because I was the X-ray technician, I would be called up to the surgery room when they put the pin into the hip and take a picture to check that the pin was in the proper position. So I got a chance to be with this very famous surgeon and I noticed that his breathing was so elegant. And when he was doing his detailed surgical work, his breath, I could see he was sort of using his breath in some way. And I, in the way that he breathed, the word elegance came to me, and grace. And I thought, wow, he's a very elegant guy, and he has this amazing skill, and it's reflected in how he breathes. And so I thought, hey, he's in the 1%. He's in the 1% of surgeons. But if you're in the 1% of money or music or engineering or medicine or art or whatever, if you're in the 1%, do you breathe differently than the average person? Are you more conscious of your breath than the average person? Do you practice breathing techniques of some kind that the average person doesn't? Do you turn to your breathing in moments when the average person, it wouldn't occur to them to turn to their breathing? And, and so I started seeking out people in the 1%. I don't care if you're in the 1% of bank robbers, I don't care what it was, martial artists, it didn't matter. And I found there are no exceptions. Absolutely everybody who has risen to the top of their field does have a better, more conscious relationship to their breath than the average person. And I have never found any exceptions to that. So it's one of the pieces of peak performance. And sometimes it's the overlooked piece. And if people have already achieved some level of skill or mastery or accomplishment, and they have not learned about breathing yet, wow, they can take everything to an even higher level. And I love working with people in that kind of upper fields, the best football players or tennis players or whatever, because they've done a lot of work on themselves, and they can take a little adjustment and they parlay that into a huge advantage. So I look for those little subtle flaws in the breathing or obvious dysfunctions in the breathing. And I try to bring people's attention to that and retrain and repattern their breathing so that it makes a difference in their performance. And it doesn't matter whether you're a CEO or you're a high school gym teacher, or you're just a parent trying to have a difficult conversation with your teenager. The ability to manage your own states puts you in a better position to deal with anything out there in the world or in between you and others. And I also think that breath work is connected to the inner peace, what I call the inner peace movement, because I've been a kind of an ambassador, a missionary for world peace my whole life, especially when I realized that world peace is dependent upon inner peace. If I can't create inner peace in myself, there's never going to be peace in the world. And breathing helps us to find that inner peace. And also breathing helps us to experience the connection that we have to other people. So it's a beautiful spiritual idea. Oh, we're all connected. We're all one. Sure, but that's kind of an intellectual, philosophical idea. But when you have a cellular experience of your connection to other people, when you have a biological experience of your connection to God, then it takes it out of the realm of intellectual and philosophical. And so that connection, the breath awakens this connection that we have to our own body. It's the connection between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. The breath is the link between the mind and the body. the breath is the link between me and my source, and the breath is the link between me and you, and me and nature, and me and the stars, and me and the moon, and me and the flowers. There's one energy in the universe, being me and being you. And when I tap into that energy through the breath, I enter into this dimension. And you guys in India have a lot of great words and names for, Sat, Chit, Ananda, consciousness, existence, bliss, Samadhi, Satori, moksha, Ketsha. There's this state that kind of transcends our everyday problems and limitations. And the breath helps us to tap into that higher potential.
Yeah, that's lovely, Dan, to hear that. And just going back to that example that you told us about that doctor, and you said that that's like 1% of the population. So it kind of consciously came to him to breathe in a certain way. It's not like he had probably studied something, and it just happened, right? So it does look like a two-way street of, because you are there because of the breath, and because of the breath you are there.
Yeah. And that's the two-way street part of the breath is that miracle, because every emotional state, every psychological state, every physiological state, every spiritual state has a corresponding breathing pattern, an associated breathing quality. And when our state changes, our breathing changes. And anybody can observe that. If I'm peaceful and calm and relaxed, I'm breathing in a certain way. When I'm angry and afraid and upset, I'm breathing in a different way. And as soon as I go from one state to another state, my breathing changes. And that two-way street is the magical part, because what we learn is by changing our breathing pattern, we can change our state. And that's really cool. There are certain breathing techniques that are associated with very high spiritual states. And there are certain breathing patterns that are associated with peak performance states, being in the zone, being in the flow. And when you identify those breathing patterns and you train them, you have a tendency to move into those higher states more quickly, more easily.
Yeah. And, there is just so much, in the last 2 years that the world has seen. And, the role of emotional health has gone to a whole new level. And, we can use breathing in just about anything and everything to basically work in our favor. So can you tell us, how do you, let breathing work for you to ride, say, emotional storms or just stressful situations that people go through?
Well, emotions are chemical events on one level. And so what I learned was that when let's say something triggers me, activates me, you say something and it upsets me, or you do something and it hurts me, or so, and I get hijacked by my emotions, right? What I found, and anybody can learn and acknowledge, is that these chemicals need to run their course in our system when we get activated. But it's only 1 or 2 minutes before our system should return back to normal, back to center, right? So if you are still upset 2 minutes after something happened, then whatever that thing was that upset you, it's no longer the cause of your upsetness. You have become the cause of your own suffering. And so, breathing nips that pattern in the butt, that we can, by getting a handle on our breath, we don't have to react emotionally. And we learn to channel emotional energy through the breath. And that's such an efficient way to process anger, fear, anxiety, depression, sadness, grief, whatever, that we can, by using the breath, we can navigate these difficult moments and return to our center, regardless of what's happening inside of us, regardless of what's happening around us. And this is a skill that can keep us clear and centered when our heart rate goes through the roof. I mean, I learned that in the military, working in high stakes, high pressure, life and death situations. I mean, I was a deep sea diver. I did
Wow.
special operations. And, when you're in the pitch dark and you're at 100 meters under the ocean and there's nobody else there and you're just feeling your way in the darkness, in the first place, I love that for some weird reason. I don't know why. I just love being down in the bottom of the ocean in the dark by
Oh
myself.
my
I
God.
don't know why, but it was just, I loved it. But when your heart rate goes through the roof with panic and fear, you learn very quickly that by getting a handle on your breath, you can control your heart rate. And and by getting a handle on our breath, we can boost our immune system. We can recover more quickly. So yeah, and I think everybody needs to discover that and explore it and develop this ability we're all born with. So
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. I'll just take a few comments that people have been writing. Of course, people are very excited to be here and hear you. And just a few things, I will just put it up here. Breath awareness and consciousness are like characterizing the breath and using that knowledge to your advantage, as a film director uses background music to create the mood of the audience.
wow, beautiful. I think of breathing like an artist who has a palette. And how many colors do you want on that palette? The more colors you have on the palette, the more potential there is to create something really beautiful and unique. And so you could take any breathing technique, you mentioned Patrick McEwen, Oxygen Advantage and the Breath Cure, or James Nestor, or Wim Hof, or
Yeah.
Stanislav Grof. There are many different schools and styles of breathing, of breath work, ancient and modern. And so, knowing the Wim Hof technique, for example, is like having one color on your palette. There are many
Right.
shades, many, but so that's my approach, is to learn as many different schools and styles and methods and techniques as possible, and let that all form inside of you as a very unique relationship to your own breath. And it's like connecting someone to their spirit. Once someone is connected to their spirit, they don't need you. They don't need a doctor. They don't need a priest. They don't need a politician. They're in touch with the source within themselves and infinite intelligence that they can plug into. And then our job is done. It's like being a midwife. Teaching breathing is like being a midwife. You're just kind of helping the birth process. You're not doing it. You're not the one who's doing it. You're just helping people give birth to something beautiful, their higher self, their highest, their superpower. Subtle energy, skills. Um, and it's kind of fun to be with people when they unlock and discover some of that potential.
Yeah. Some more comments then. Nichiren Buddhism also speaks of connecting to the world through chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Combined with breathing, this is a great way to connect to the
Oh,
universe. And in
yeah,
continuation to that, and that practice also believes that the transformation of one individual is the first step to world peace, much like the thoughts expressed by Dan.
yeah. Well, every day there are millions of Buddhist monks who face the four directions of the compass, and they simply generate peaceful thoughts and the prayer for loving kindness. Now, as crazy as the world is, I think it would be in a much worse place if people weren't doing things like that. and
Right.
and and the breath is, if I generate a heartfelt intention, a wish, a prayer for peace, for joy, for health in the world, if that's a pure intention and is generated from my heart, that makes a difference in the world. There's a certain quality of energy that is nurturing and uplifting and healing about deliberately generating those kinds of heartfelt intentions. And then you put the power of the breath behind it, and you can change the world. And so, that's a beautiful practice that we teach. You focus on your heart, you breathe into your heart, and you imagine, okay, what is the most important thing? What's the most beautiful thing? Love, joy, peace, health, freedom, consciousness, whatever it is. While you're focusing on that high spiritual quality, while you're breathing, you're generating that energy. And so you start to change your own state with your own breath, and then you can release that intention out into the world on the exhale. So, I picture this when you throw a stone in the water and you see that ring of a wave go out through the water. Well, we can plant a thought out in the world, like throwing a stone, and then that wave radiates out. A heartfelt intention powered by the breath definitely makes a difference. And we don't need to be the Pope, and we don't need to be a saint to bless the world. Every breath is a blessing if we just wake up and realize it. And you can make every breath a prayer just by having a heartfelt intention and literally breathing that intention. It's like a living prayer. And if you haven't experienced the breath as a blessing, then that's a great thing to do. Just sort of wake up and realize, you know what? Every single breath I get, it's a miracle.
Absolutely.
It's a miracle. and once you connect to that miraculous nature of the breath, your whole life changes. It gets to be really hard to be violent because you feel your connection to other people. It's really hard to go unconscious because your breath keeps waking you up. And it's really hard to remain tense or anxious because the breathing vents and releases that tension and that anxiety as soon as we turn to it. And if you're depressed and you don't think you have any energy, one thing I learned in the military, working with special forces and so on, is that when you think your battery is empty, when you can't run another step, when you don't think you can do one more thing, you still have 40% of juice left in your battery. You just haven't learned how to access it yet. And so once people learn that, Yahoo.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from, after this conversation, people are going to, definitely be aware of breathing and kind of pay more
I hope
attention
so.
to that. Yeah, yeah.
I hope
Some,
so.
some more comments. Dan, relationship between state and breathing. I think we spoke about this earlier. Very well articulated. Um, Remembering to deep breathe at the time of heightened emotions helps immensely to reset. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And, calling it deep breathing, kind of, I don't know what people do in their head when they say deep breathing. But very specifically in dealing with emotions, for example, I mean, one of my mantra for breathing is open and expand. That's the inhale. Relax and let go. That's the exhale. And just the ability to do that when a powerful emotion has gotten a grip on you, in and of itself, that's an amazing capacity to develop. Because you notice when you have a powerful emotion, one of the first things that happens is our throat closes up.
yeah,
It's as if the throat is trying to close up to protect ourselves from the intensity of the feeling. And so just by literally opening your throat and inviting the breath to come when an emotion happens. Instead of that, you have this, and we find that the breath allows us to flow that emotion, and it takes the stress off the body, and the body can relax in the presence of a powerful emotion. And if it's a beautiful emotion, even more important to be able to open and relax. If something is really big and powerful, we need to open to it, whether it's powerfully painful or powerfully beautiful. Opening to it, that's the reality. Fighting it and resisting it and trying to control it, it is what it is.
yeah.
We need to open to it in the same way we open to reality. And we need to relax in the presence of it, no matter what it is. Because when you are conscious and aware, and when you are relaxed, you make better decisions. Your movements are more graceful. And then you add conscious breathing into that mix. And now you can alter the quality of the energy you're feeling. And you can do some kind of an alchemical process. You can turn sadness into gratitude. You can turn anger into determination. You can turn fear into excitement by changing how you connect with your experience through the breath. And really, I think a really good way to understand it is, if people have seen this, it's called the magic eye photographs. If you look at it, they have books of them, and you look at this picture and it's just random geometric shapes. But if you do something to your vision, if you focus a foot in front of the picture or behind the picture, this 3D image pops out. Now, if you look at that picture the way you look at all other pictures, you cannot see that 3D image. You have to deliberately do something to your vision in order to unlock that hidden three-dimensional image, right? So everybody's seen those things, right? So for me, the experience is like that with breathing, and it's connected to feeling. So if I feel my anger or my joy or my doubt or my sadness, if I feel anything, even my own body, in the same way that I feel everything, I'm never going to unlock that hidden potential. But if I can learn a different way of feeling, if I can adjust the way that I feel, like a verb, adjust the way that I feel, I'm going to unlock a certain hidden power or potential. In the same way that it happens on this level of vision, on the level of feeling, the breath helps us to find a new way to feel, and it helps us to resolve emotional and psychological and physical issues in a new and very powerful way, because we've unlocked this hidden power in the breath.
Yeah. And I mean, there are just like so many things that people need to just know about and be aware of such a simple practice like just conscious breathing or just breath awareness. And some more questions. Yeah. Dan, about, again, I think that people have been asking a lot of questions about anxiety and stress.
Stress, proactivity.
Is there any breath work to
Yeah.
help manage stress?
Beautiful. What a great question. Yeah, because breath work is a no-brainer when it comes to handling stress, because when we become stressed, our breathing becomes inhibited. It can become dysfunctional. It doesn't need to, but it most often does. And so anti-stress breathing, for example, low and slow, getting the breath down into the floor of the pelvis, feeling the breath low in the belly in the Dansien or the Hara in Japan and China, right? Into that center of gravity in the body, really feeling that you can get the breath into the floor of the pelvis. So get the breath very, very low, and then slow your breathing down, starting with one breath. As soon as you slow your breath down, even before you're finished with that slow breath, you're already changing your state. You're already altering, you're activating the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. And so one breath is enough to begin to move into another state. And so anti-anxiety, anti-stress breathing, low and slow. And it's funny you mentioned anxiety, because, when we become anxious, our breath gets high in our chest. It gets kind of rapid and shallow. And then that high, rapid, shallow chest breathing actually produces feelings of anxiety. And then those feelings of anxiety cause us to breathe more shallow and more chaotic. And now we're in a vicious circle. So as soon as you step in with the breath and you alter the breathing pattern, you interrupt that anxiety cycle. And I have a beautiful teacher. I just reconnected with him after like 25 years, actually. Robert Gerzon has a book called Finding Serenity in the Age of Anxiety. And he talks about anxiety as a cord that's made up of 3 threads. So there's natural anxiety, which is I get a promotion at work. I should be nervous. I have more responsibility. Or I'm on a first date and I'm kind of anxious. Well, that's normal, right? Or I'm about to jump out of a helicopter or jump out of a parachute, right out of a plane with a parachute. Or I'm at the top of the mountain and I'm getting ready to lift off. I should feel anxiety. That's fuel to perform. That's healthy anxiety, normal, healthy anxiety. There's a second kind of anxiety, another thread called toxic anxiety. And this is caused by this performance degrading self-talk. Oh, I don't think I can make it. I don't know if I can do it. Why am I so stupid? Why can't I do anything right? This toxic voice that causes us anxiety. That's different than natural anxiety, right? And then there's a third thread called sacred anxiety. And it's connected to the big questions in life. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? What happens when I die? Those big questions cause a certain kind of anxiety. So when you unravel the cord of anxiety, you treat each of those threads in a way that they need to be dealt with. Natural anxiety, toxic anxiety, or sacred anxiety. And what a beautiful model. And we use it in breathwork all the time because people can confuse toxic anxiety with natural anxiety or sacred anxiety with toxic anxiety. And the breath just helps us to unravel those threads and to just deal with whatever type of anxiety it is.
Right. So whatever type of anxiety it is, the key is low and slow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I experience sacred anxiety, I want to experience more of it because it is an evolutionary force. It's, it's not an accident that breathing is completely automatic and unconscious, and it's also totally under our control. That is not an accident of nature. That's not a coincidence. That's an invitation. That's an opportunity to take part in our own nature, in our own evolution. And so conscious breathing is an evolutionary tool. And when I am overcome with sacred anxiety, then I turn the breath up. I breathe as if I am running up a hill. And that's a great practice for anybody. Even if you're not feeling sacred anxiety, you can use that technique to unlock all that spiritual, that sacred power that we have. So and let people take it home and try it. If you're a runner, and I hope you are, how would you be breathing if you were running up a hill at full speed? You wouldn't even have to think of breathing. The demand for energy would make your breath turn on, right? And so it's trying to give you enough energy to manage all the metabolic demand of that powerful activity. Now, what would happen? And see, so while you're running, you're breathing in this very powerful way. Your muscles are eating up all the energy. And so, but what would happen if you breathed as if you were running up a hill, but you lay down and you relax completely? Every muscle in your body, every joint, but you breathe as if you were engaged in this really stressful, high kind of state. Since your muscles don't need the energy, you're not doing any activity. The body will say, hey, what's all this breathing about? I'm not doing anything. I'm just relaxing. I don't need to breathe. And if you override that, then you unlock something. You practice completely relaxing, but breathing as if you're working very hard. Because then you're going to access, since the body doesn't need that energy, but you insist on producing it, that energy has to go somewhere. It's got to do something. And since the muscles don't need it, it's going to do other work. It's going to do emotional detoxing. It's going to do psychological balancing, and it's going to do spiritual awakening. And so that technique I just described is the rebirthing technique. Conscious, connected breathing, active inhale, passive exhale, no pauses or gaps between the breath. and connect that kind of breathing to total relaxation and staying awake. And every single time a miracle happens.
Wow.
Pretty
But
cool.
I think, yeah, very cool. But I think, Dan, this is something like people should, I mean, can they try, or it should only be under
Yeah.
supervision?
No,
No.
try it. And you try it. You lay down and you start turning up your breath like a locomotive, starting to get momentum, right? And just get into that powerful rhythm, and you'll see what's going to happen if you're relaxing on every exhale, pulling in more energy on every inhale, pulling in energy, relaxing, pulling in energy, relaxing, and do this continuously. And within the first minute or two, you're going to start to feel physiological changes and chemical changes. And so if you keep breathing, you're going to go through that and you're going to pop into another field. So, and if it gets too intense, you just let go of the practice. Just let your breath come and go by itself, and just meditate. And if it gets too intense or too scary, just forget about the breathing. Let the breath come and go by itself, and meditate and enjoy the feelings that come up. And you might get tetany, you might get tingling and vibrating. That's all normal. It's all healthy. If it's too intense, just forget about the breathing and focus on relaxation and meditation. And if you can handle it, turn the breath up. As long as you can still relax and be in a meditative state, you can keep cranking up the breath. And that combination of deep relaxation and powerful breathing helps us access a state that you cannot access any other way. Most people, when they breathe really deep and fast, they don't relax. And when they relax, they don't breathe. And so they give up one for the other. And if you can bring the two things together, you unlock a state that can be unlocked in no other way. And everybody deserves to feel that. Now, it's a lot easier if you do it with a coach, someone who's done a lot of sessions themselves. But, you know, we can make our way on our own. We can save a lot of time and a lot of energy by taking advantage of a good coach. But if there is no coach around, you can learn to be your own coach. And it's not rocket science. Pull in, let go. Open, relax, expand, release, inhale, exhale. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And just anything else that comes up, you just let it come and go, and stay focused on the breathing, stay focused on relaxation. And every single time you're going to experience something transformative. And so if your heart's in the right place, then something beautiful is going to happen for sure.
Yeah. So many takeaways from this session, Dan. I don't think we will let you go. We will make you sit here with us and like speak to us for a long, long time. We have some more questions here, Dan. I think something about sleeping. So there are two questions on sleeping. Are there any breathing techniques to help one fall asleep faster? And there is a related one. For overcoming insomnia, this would help people suffering from insomnia. Yeah, any techniques for sleeping?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Well, in one, my teacher in China, Hu Bin, my Qigong master, he didn't stop practicing breath work until he was like 54 years old, and he was starting to get arthritis and high blood pressure and early onset diabetes, and so then he turned to Qigong. And I met him. He was 85 years old. He'd been practicing already for 30 years. Can you, so there are several exercises you can do for fighting insomnia and falling asleep. But the first lesson I got from him, instead of trying to go back to sleep, why not meditate? Why not, if you're awake in the middle of the night, so what? You can relax and stay awake, and you can get just as much rejuvenation as if you were fast asleep. If you relax your muscles on purpose, so you're awake. Okay, I'm awake at night. Is my jaw tense? Is my shoulder tense? Is my mind busy? So if I relax my mind through meditation, my body's going to relax and I'll fall asleep. If I relax my body, my muscles and my joints, my mind will become quieter and I'll fall asleep. And if I don't fall asleep, that's okay, because I'm practicing relaxation and I'm practicing meditation, both of which are very healing and very nourishing to the system. But if you want to fall asleep, as soon as you start to make your exhale longer, you're already triggering the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. So you might do a shushing breath, right? Taking a long inhale slowly. That slowness is really important. And then a long, slow shushing breath, right? And you can feel yourself relaxing and settling down. Andrew Weil has made one particular breathing pattern quite famous, the 4-7-8 technique. You can Google it. It's very popular. Inhale for 4, for a count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 7. Exhale for a count of 8, 4-7-8. And just do a couple of these breaths. And a lot of people, that really works for them, but it never really worked for me. It keeps me awake. If I'm counting my breath, I'm staying awake. It's keeping me conscious, right? And so another friend, Stig Severinsen, who was a world champion free diver. He holds the record for holding your breath underwater, which
20
I wonder,
minutes,
is
right?
anybody out there? Yeah, do
Was
you
it
know
20
how
minutes?
long? 22 minutes and 10 seconds. So that you have to be very relaxed in order to hold your breath that long. So he uses a different exercise, and it's the same one that I use. It's like that, the opposite of a locomotive getting momentum. It's a locomotive slowing down. So you get a handle on your breath, and in the beginning, just for a few moments, you breathe very quickly, and then begin to slow it down. It's like that. Chug, 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 chug. So for me, that helps me slow down and relax. And I just slip right into sleep as I'm slowing my breathing down and relaxing. So each person can find their own way, but relaxation is in the exhalation. And when you lengthen your exhale, you trigger the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system. You leave that fight or flight anxiety state, and you naturally fall into relaxation. But here's a very interesting thing. Most people, their reaction to relaxation is sleep. So it's like, if I start to relax and I relax more and I relax more, at some point my body says, wow, I'm so relaxed, I should be sleeping. And you go unconscious. And there's something really magical and beautiful about being wide awake and being totally relaxed at the same time. And it's such a powerful state and it's actually a very natural state, but we rarely experience it. And when people experience being wide awake and completely relaxed, it's like a religious experience. It's like a peak religious experience. It's that powerful. It's that beautiful. And it's that rare. And so the ability, and I mentioned that the ability to relax into intensity and the ability to develop this relaxation in combination with powerful breathing unlocks this capacity. And then you can choose to be awake or to be asleep, whichever happens to be more useful in the moment. And you can find a beautiful space in between waking and sleeping, which is extremely creative state. And it's also a very nourishing kind of rebooting kind of a state, that combination of peace and power, energy and relaxation.
Mm.
So yeah, but it's so intuitive. And breathing is something like balance. You cannot
Mm.
teach balance. It doesn't matter how good I am at balancing. I can't teach you balance, but you can learn it. And breathing is like that. You cannot teach someone else breathing, but you can learn it. And when you learn it from the inside out, then that's far better than when you read something in a book and you kind of have an understanding, but you don't own it. It's not a felt experience, right? And so that kind of knowledge that comes from actual experience, the more you practice, the deeper you can go into this peaceful state and this powerful, energized state. And the easier it is to access it, and the more quickly you can go from one state to the next. So if I'm fast asleep, and I've always had the kind of job where I'm fast asleep and the alarm goes off and I got to do surgery, or I got to put out a fire, or, you know, I can do something, and you got to go from being fast asleep to being completely alert and productive in a flash. And so the ability to do that opposite. I mean, I only have 5 minutes, but I really need to rest and relax and re-energize. I can use my breath to go really deep, really quickly. And instead of needing 8 hours of sleep, I can do 10 minutes of breathing and I can come back fresh and ready for the next wave of activity. So very, very
Yeah.
useful skills, but they're intuitive. And that's why we need to practice. And that's why having a good coach and actually just being surrounded by a community of people who have the same intention like
Yeah.
you do, you know, just mindful running. I mean, if you want to be a mindful runner, it's a good idea to hang around with other people who want to be mindful runners. It just increases and accelerates all of our learning and all of our progress when you conspire with others, when you breathe
Right.
together. Conspiracy. So, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I want to do
Right.
both.
Right. Wonderful. And it's like yin and yang, right? When you spoke about balance, breath is about
Mhm.
balance. It's about doing both yin and yang together.
Yeah. And now you're entering into the world of Tantra. Inhale,
Mm.
exhale, yin, yang, positive, negative, male, female, within, without. Uh, the- you know, that point where the inhale becomes the exhale, that's a magical, mystical point. What happens when male
Mm.
and female merge, when yin and yang merge? What happens in that magical, mystical point where positive and negative, active and passive meet? Every single breath is a tantric experience. The universe is making love to us. You know, we're opening and we are being penetrated by life. And then we empty and pour ourselves out into life. That totality, that's Tantra. And if you can be total with every single in breath and every single out breath, you enter into this process of intercourse with existence, of love making with the divine, with the source. And it's right there in our breathing. You don't have to go anywhere. You
Mm.
don't need a partner. It's the quality of the breath. It's the kind of consciousness that you bring to your breath. And that's what unlocks the power and the potential of it.
Yeah, and I think there was one of the comments earlier, Dan, and I feel it myself. Like just hearing you talk about this is very therapeutic in itself. So it's very calming, and just the way you explain, the whole beauty of breath and your sighs of reliefs. Yeah.
Yeah, that sigh of relief is like a coming home breath. You know, we open and expand. It's an inhale, twice as big as normal.
Mm.
And then you relax and let go. And when you let the breath go, let your jaw go, let your shoulders go, let go of whatever thought you had on your mind, let go of the past, let go of pain, let go of fear, let go of anxiety, let go of negative thoughts, let go of who you think you are. Open and expand to more, relax and let go, and you fall into a place in yourself. You use that exhale to drop down into your center, to leave the surface, leave the periphery, leave the circumference, and dive into your center. And that exhale becomes a way that we come back into center, that we come back home. I call it a coming home breath.
Yeah.
And I practice it, and now it's a natural thing. You know, before the phone rings, then answer the phone. Somebody asks you a question, then answer the question. Turn to your breath, inject conscious breaths into your everyday activities, and you're going to begin to transform your life. It cannot not happen. And it's very, very simple, but it takes willingness. It takes remembering, it takes reminding, and it takes practice. But once you practice, it becomes second nature. And it's really difficult for me to become physically tense because I practice so often that when I started to feel tension, I would take an inhale, open and expand, relax and let go, and I would blow that tension off. And I practice that so much that it happens by itself. Tension starts to build up in my body. I don't even notice it, but my breath notices, and the breath comes in, and it washes away that tension. It keeps me from becoming too tense. Or if my bliss gets dented and I start to feel depressed or sad or my energy level goes down, I practice breathing consciously so many times in that situation to re-energize myself that it happens by itself. As soon as my bliss gets dented, the breath comes out of nowhere. And I don't even do it. My system does it for me. It becomes like second nature. And then you just keep, it's hard to be in a negative state because your breath keeps steering you back to your center. Right. And so training, practice. But even a little bit of practice, and we can accomplish some really amazing things.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Dan. One question: while climbing steps, I'm out of breath. How do you improve that?
Focus on your exhale and breathe in rhythm to your footsteps. Before you climb steps, just walk in a flat place and use your breath as if you're using your breath to move your feet. So maybe you inhale for 2 steps and you exhale for 3 steps. Anything where you combine very conscious pulling in, letting go in rhythm to your footsteps, because it's a lot easier to keep up than it is to catch up, right? So you stay ahead of your energy demand by breathing consciously in rhythm to your footsteps, and practice on flat ground. And then you'll see next time you climb steps, very consciously, suck the fatigue out of your body with the breath and use your breath in rhythm to your footsteps in whatever way intuitively comes to you. I could give you a formula: inhale 4 steps, exhale 4 steps, or inhale 2 steps, exhale 4 steps, or inhale 4 steps, exhale 2 steps. But you need to find it yourself, and you can tell when you're able to maintain energy or stay ahead of that fatigue. So you find the ideal breathing pattern. But it's the principle of connecting breathing with movement, and it's the principle of rhythm, breathing in rhythm to your footsteps, and just practice that, and you'll find your way. Mm-hmm.
Right. Another point: I read your book, but listening to you is more exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, just wanted to ask you this question, Dan, because you're speaking to us, most of the people in the audience are from India. So what inspires you? Because I've read that in your book, and I wanted you to let people know that what inspires you about India and your association with it.
Well, I went to India for the first time in 1980 because I was learning rebirthing breath work. And at the time, in order to be certified in rebirthing, you had to go to India and you had to meet Harikan Babaji, who's spoken about in Yogananda's book, Paramahansa Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi. He speaks about his guru's guru, this immortal yogi Christ of India who materializes and dematerializes. And, he's a manifestation of Shiva. He's just like kind of more of a phenomenon than a person. And so I went to India in 1980 for the first time, and I was initiated into Kriya Yoga, Kundalini by Babaji. And so it was like coming home to a place I'd never been before, the first time I went to India. And I love the extremes, the dirty, noisy city. And then you go out and it's sublime, pure, peaceful. And that clash of, oh, yeah, it's amazing. And the light in people's eyes, no matter how poor they are, there's some light in the eyes there. And so in the West, we didn't have any real established traditions around breath work. And, it's a science in India, right? Breathing pranayama is a science. And so I woke up in India. I found my teacher in India. I went to India as one person. I came back as another. I've never been the same. I've gone back quite a few times. I love bringing people to India. India forces Westerners to learn how to let go. If you go to India with a plan, and you find out that life has its own plan. And I met Indira Gandhi on my very first trip to India. What a miracle! And I was in India 3 days, and I'm sitting with the Prime Minister of India. And the first thing I told her, I says, this is really amazing. I've been trying to meet the President of the United States my whole life. I'm in India for 2 days and I'm meeting you. How does that happen? And she said, oh, India is a very magical country. And so it is. For me, it's been the most magical country I've ever visited. And
wow.
And you guys have, when I left, we had a final banquet when I left after I'd been there for a month on my first trip. And it was about 15 people. And I looked around the table, and without exception, every single Indian was wearing a suit and a tie, and every single American was wearing robes and mala beads. And I looked at this, I'm like, this is really wild. The Indians want to be Westerners, and the Westerners want to be Indians. So here's that coming together. I think the West has an important piece of the puzzle, and the East has an important piece. And when you bring those two pieces together, life is good.
Right. So I'm very conscious of the time as well, Dan, and I just have like two quick questions before we sign out. And we've been seeing a lot of your videos, and there's one of them where you talk about the boom boom stick, and it inspired some people to even buy it and inhale it. So
yeah.
we have someone ask, what is your take on the boom boom sticks?
It was fun. I mean, essential oils, and I have friends who do Bach flower remedies, and there is something about essential oils, that they're connected to different emotions and states, and fragrances have a certain power to, alert people. And so it's fun. For me, it's fun.
Yeah,
I think there's an inner fragrance of grace that we really want to be able to taste. There's a nectar of some kind, inner nectar, and I prefer that over, let's say, external fragrances. But
right.
I appreciate them. I enjoy them, and they're fun. And
Yeah.
but I'm after this inner fragrance of grace, of love, of peace, and this divine nectar that we can be infused with through the breath.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. And any messages, any two things that you would like to tell our viewers before we sign off?
Yeah, sigh of relief. Just practice sighs of relief on purpose. Turn it into a powerful conscious breathing exercise. It's not even a technique. A sigh of relief is something we all do automatically. In fact, our body does it by itself about 12 times an hour. And so when you do
Yeah.
it consciously, you are coming into harmony with your nature. You don't need complicated, techniques. A very simple sigh of relief done with great consciousness, with passion. Experiment with deep ones, shallow ones, fast ones, slow ones. Inject that conscious breath, exaggerate the relaxation on the exhale, exaggerate the opening on the inhale. So just use a sigh of relief. The other thing is this principle of rhythm and circles and cycles, and just play with your breath in different rhythms. And the spirit of breath will notice that you are beginning to play with it, and the spirit of breath will begin to guide you. So sighs of relief, yawning, play with yawning,
Yes.
exaggerate your yawning, and play with different breathing rhythms. And the rest will begin to unfold for you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dan, for your time. It was really nice. And I know I couldn't get all the questions up because of time, but I think we've covered most of the things. And this is the book. I just wanted to show this to the audience one more. This is the book which has very, very simply and beautifully written by Dan. And yeah, so this is available. And thank you so much, Dan. Thanks for interacting with us. And I think we all will
Thank you.
practice the things that you spoke about.
Wonderful. Thank you. Be well, stay well, practice breathing.
Yes. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Okay.